Hey guys, it's TurboFD, and today I decided to do a review on the new Resident Evil Revelations 2. Now, keep in mind that this review doesn't reflect the game as a whole due to it being an episodic release, and this review being on only the first episode. Now, this is a weird move for the Resident Evil series, especially since each episode apparently releases every week. Wouldn't it just been better just to wait and release them all at once? Oh well, that is my call to make, and enough of that, let's get on to the review. First, let's talk about the story. So far it's very vague, but that's due to only being the first episode. Claire and Moira have been kidnapped after being raided at a party by an unknown group. They wake in a prison with a bracelet on their wrist. This bracelet has a color indicator that shows the amount of fear in the wearer. Why is this necessary? I have no idea. After a bit, you're contacted by a woman through your bracelet. We don't know her exact intentions, but as you can see, she's having fun watching you go through all this. She then provides you with the information on where to head to next towards the end of Claire's part of the first episode. Moira then sends a broadcast requesting help off the island that they are currently on. We now switch to Barry Burton's part. To keep it short, he receives the broadcast from Moira and heads over there to save her. When he arrives, he meets a little girl named Natalia, who he basically teams up with to find Moira. You later then find out that Natalia can sense enemies, zombies, or whatever you call them through the walls. It's basically going through the same area as Claire, but undoing everything that she's already done. Now let's move on to the gameplay. The gameplay is basically like the past few Resident Evils. It's the over-the-shoulder run and shoot that we've seen from Resident Evil 4 and on. Nothing really special about it, and that's it. There's little differences except that they didn't include the movement abilities from the recent Resident Evil 6. There's little dodges you can do, but nothing as good or fluid as Resident Evil 6. Puzzle solving is almost non-existent. It's the basic go here, turn on this switch to turn on this thing so that you can move that. There is one puzzle they implemented, and I have no idea why it's even here, where you use either Moira's crowbar or Natalia to open a locked chest. The puzzle here is to basically find the hidden spot and hold either Z or the mouse button to close in on it. If it's red, then you stop and you find a new spot. If it's not, then you're golden. This is completely useless. Why can't Claire or Barry even open the box? Shooting doesn't even have the same feeling as the previous games. In the other games, it actually felt like you shot the enemy in certain areas. For example, in the older games, when you shot an enemy in the face, they would tend to hold their face and kneel over. And here, it seems their face just soaks up the bullet, and if it does do a good amount of damage, they'll kind of be in a daze, or flinch. None of the weapons seem to feel like they have any power besides the double-barrel shotgun. Lastly, the raid mode. While it is a cool little time consumer, it's just not as fun as Mercenaries mode in the main series. Without the maneuverability from Resident Evil 6, this just seems like a very dull mode. You basically kill enemies in an area, get a key, then move on to the next. Rinse and repeat. There's also no co-op yet, so it gets really boring after a while in my opinion. Now, let's move on to the graphics. For the price of the game, you can't really complain. They are okay. Nothing really terrible, but they're dated. There are a lot of reused assets that you can see through the episode. One problem I had with the game were some of the textures were just plain blurry, while others right next to it seemed completely sharp. It seemed as if the anisotropic filtering was lower on some parts and high on the others. There's also no option to change anisotropic filtering in the graphics menu. Anti-aliasing seems to lack options too. You can choose between 3 settings, all of which are terrible in my opinion. The settings are FXAA, FXAA3, and FXAA3HQ. These are all terrible because of the amount of blur and how little it actually removes the aliasing. I wish they would have at least added options for something like MLAA or SMAA. Now, let's talk about the character models. They're also just okay. It mainly looks like models you would see in a PS3 game. Again, I must remind you this is a $25 game, which wasn't developed by the main Resident Evil team. Now, let's move on to the last category, which is the performance. Let's start with my system build before talking about the performance. I currently have an Intel i7-4790K, a GTX 980, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 144Hz monitor. Now, the game runs like a dream at 1080p and 120Hz with variable frame rate. I easily get 120 FPS with little to no dips, with maxed everything. I tried using DSR to downsample from both 1440p and 4K and I got great FPS with both. Not exactly hitting 120 FPS, but definitely going over 60, which is all that matters. This is where the performance seems to take a crap. Now you're wondering, well, you just said you got over 60 FPS, how does it run like crap? Well, you see, everything becomes a mess besides the FPS. There seems to be stuttering with everything. The animations start to become choppy. You can notice Claire's jacket here starts to become choppy and is not as fluid as you see here in 1080p. Next, you can notice a stutter with the camera when aiming, as shown here. This is a problem and hopefully will be patched soon. So, if you want to play perfectly fine, then stick to 1080p. Who knows, maybe I'm the only one with this problem? Despite those problems above 1080p, the game is very solid and rarely ever dips. Resident Evil Revelations 2 is an average game that brings nothing new to the table. Does that mean it's a bad game? Not really. Actually, despite how my review may sound, I actually had fun with this first episode, and hope that fun carries over to the other episodes. It's a good solid game and worth the $25 price tag. One thing I must mention before you buy is that there's no offline co-op for the PC version, even though it was advertised. This may be a deal breaker for some, but it wasn't for me. All in all, it's a good game for the price and a must buy. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you disagree or agree, let me know in the comments below. And as always, see you next time.